Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1162B, and today's date is December 26, 2016, and the title of the episode is, The Elite Are Provoking China to Escalate the Chances of a Conflict. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, we understand that this alleged suspect took a truck, ran into the marketplace in Berlin, and we said right off the bat that they were going to use this to create more draconian laws. And we see right now they're running these polls and they're trying to convince the people of Germany and around the world that, it's time to have more surveillance in public places. Now, of course, what they're saying is we want to put up a lot more cameras all around. We want to record everything that's going on. And the question is, if they had cameras all around, you know what they would have captured? The truck going into the marketplace. Would the cameras stop that? No. But they're trying to convince the public that they need more surveillance. They had a poll, and they're trying to convince everyone that 60% of Germans, they want enhanced video surveillance in public spaces. And they're saying, well, there were no police cameras in this whole area, so of course we couldn't stop anything. Well, police cameras don't stop anything. They record what's happening already. And what's very interesting about all of this is the Interior Minister called on Berlin's Regional Assembly to urgently rethink its attitude towards video observation. And Angela Merkel, well, they've drafted a bill last week that would permit increased video observation in public areas, as well as transportation networks. And we can see that this was already planned in advance. And another interesting fact came out of this, and I joked around about it, how this driver, who wasn't really the driver, who they say is the person that took this truck and rammed it into the marketplace. I made jokes that, he forgot to leave his ID, just like in 9/11, just like in the France attacks. And it turns out, coming out of CNN, that the suspect's identity papers were found inside the truck. And this is how they knew who to go after. I mean, seriously? They've just completed the false flag that we mapped out. That was the last piece, and I was surprised at the time, and I was joking about it, that they didn't do this. And here it is today. Well, they just completed the entire false flag. We see the United States right now. They are provoking China and pushing really hard. Now, coming out of Fox News, I saw this story where U.S. intel China to put missiles on the South China Sea man-made islands to guard airstrips. Now, in the article, which is very interesting, you have to read the wording. U.S. intelligence community thinks, the word thinks, that hundreds of surface-to-air missiles that China recently shipped to Hainan Island in South China Sea might be moved to the country's nearby disputed man-made islands in the coming months. Well, they didn't say it was going to happen. They think this is going to happen. And China was having some type of drill in this area. They were having war drills. They were conducting cross-sea training and tests. And they were taking their fighter jets, launching them off the aircraft carrier, all in the South China Sea. And the United States government central bankers, they're playing this up quite a bit. Well, let's rewrite this story a little bit and say the U.S. Navy was conducting drills in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, it's in the Gulf of Mexico, which is surrounded by many different other countries. Would that be a real big story right now? No. So China was having drills in the South China Sea near their country. Not really a big story, but when the U.S. government central bankers play it up, it sounds worse than it really is. And the reason they're doing this is because they are pushing and provoking, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to create this conflict, and they're trying to paint China in a certain way, just like they've been doing with Russia, just like they've been doing with North Korea, just like they've been doing with Syria, just like they do with Iran. And they're continually doing this, trying to get this conflict started. We see out in Libya, Putin's government is right now befriending Khalifa Haftar, who is the general out there of one of the factions. Russia is supplying funds and military expertise to Haftar's base in the east. And we can see right now that Russia has backed Assad. They're backing Haftar. And we see that the U.S. is telling Haftar to join in with the unity government. Now, of course, he's not going to do this. And we can see that we have the United States on one side trying to push the unity government, and we have Russia making deals with this general who is in line with Gaddafi, who is a Gaddafi supporter. And we see right now that Russia realizes that he is going to take control of Libya, just like Assad has control of Syria. And the United States government central bankers, their puppet government, well, it's going to be thrown out. Just like it's happening in Yemen, just like it's happening in Lebanon, just like it's going to happen in Iraq. It already happened in Syria, where they couldn't even get a puppet government in there. They're losing control of the Middle East. And we knew this was coming a while back, which puts the petrodollar in a tough position, because we know eventually when these countries are controlled and run by other individuals who are not puppets of the U.S. government, believe me, they're not going to be selling the oil using the dollar, especially if they're making deals with Russia and China. They're going to use gold. They're going to use maybe the yuan, maybe the ruble, everything but the dollar, which means the petrodollar once again is going to be doomed. The system is at its end game right now. Countries realize this. And right now, since the United States government central bankers couldn't take over Syria, then take over Iran, and keep control of the Middle East, things are rapidly falling apart very quickly. We see a group of British generals and military advisors. They have arrived in Syria to recruit and train the terrorist groups which have withdrawn from Aleppo. And remember, the UK sent in advisors into this area, and it looks like they're trying to retrain them and maybe have or launch more offensives inside of Syria. We see the wreckage of the Tu-154. Well, they haven't found the black boxes just yet in the Black Sea. And very interestingly, they're saying that this had nothing to do with terrorism at this point, but they won't know everything until they get the black boxes. But they were flying over the Black Sea, and we know Ukraine is there, which is very interesting. And we know the United States government central bankers, Ukraine, we know that they might have had a hand in this. They might have been putting pressure on Russia, sending them a message, just like they sent them a message when the Russian ambassador was killed. And we can see that we're going to see more of these events. Now, very interestingly, and I mentioned this briefly on the news brief, we see a NATO Auditor General. He was found dead by gunshot to the head. And the authorities are calling this death a suicide, but his family is saying, no, this is not a suicide, and they're disputing the assessment. Now, this NATO Auditor General was looking into counteraction against terrorism financing issues. And he came across that the United States and Turkey, they were dealing with the Islamic State. And Turkey and the United States would be funding them, they'd be supporting them. And we see right now that he might have been on to this and maybe collecting the information about what was really going on in Syria. And there are reports saying that he had very strange phone calls, that people were visiting him, telling him to cut out the investigation. And we're starting to see that this might have been most likely a planned hit to take him out before he found, things out and exposed Turkey and the United States government central bankers and the coalition forces. Because we can see right now things are rapidly deteriorating for the elite. Doesn't mean they're going to just step back and say, hey, we give. They're covering their tracks. Because we can see right now things are rapidly disintegrating out in the Middle East. Trump is now going to be moving into the White House. They might assassinate him. That might be another event might occur. But at this point, what we're seeing is that he's scheduled to be sworn in January. And we know right now that the economy is built on a gigantic illusion. And what we're seeing right now is they are definitely covering their tracks, destroying the evidence, making sure that nobody understands and realizes what has been done in these areas. Remember, the UN is going into Syria investigating war crimes in this area. And Russia is in Syria. They'll be doing their own investigation. Russia's moving into Libya. They'll be finding other things out. And this whole thing could come crashing down. And we can see why the elite, they're pushing so hard to get war started. Because this will cover up everything. It will cover up what they did in the financial industry. It will cover up what they did across the world. And once that is done, they can say, well, we're in war. I mean, all this other stuff, throw it out the window. It's almost like right before 9/11, where that was a $6 trillion, where the Pentagon, they misplaced it someplace. And then all of a sudden, that whole entire story was completely forgotten about. This is the same thing that is happening right now. So we can expect more events. We can expect things to accelerate and escalate because we're heading towards the end right now. And this is why you need to be prepared and ready for what is coming. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.